Engaging, provocative, inspirational conversations. Welcome to The Culture Point with Aaron Phillip Clark. My guest today is author Chuck Wendig. His new novel, The Staircase in the Woods, is a gripping horror tale that explores childhood trauma and grief as a group of friends reunite to investigate a mysterious staircase that may hold the key to their lost friend's whereabouts. Welcome to The Culture Point, Chuck. Pleasure to have you
Thanks
here.
for having me. Yeah, man. What's going on?
It's so interesting because I came to your writing through Miriam, which is a little bit more hard-boiled. It's supernatural element there.
Yeah,
But
it's like a horror crime kind of vibe to those books. Yeah, no, they're pretty old school for me at this point. Yeah.
yeah. Well, yeah, it's been a while. But
Yeah.
that's how long you've been at it. And so with this book, I think this was the first, I guess, kind of traditional kind of horror novel that I've read of yours.
Okay.
Um,
Nice.
I have read, I think, the first Star Wars tie-in
Nice.
that you did. And so obviously it's easy to make these comparisons to, Stephen King's It. There's even an element there of kind of Stand By Me. And I think that's an interesting paradigm of this idea of the friends coming together, right? Having them be showing us a lot of their past, but also bringing us into the present and seeing how they changed. And so as we kind of look at this group of friends, and I don't want to give a whole lot away here, but as we look at this group of friends, they have gone through some changes, and it's like a lot of the changes are ideological. And I'm wondering, is that something that just came to you as you were writing, or did you really set out to show how time can alter people's perceptions, and whether it's political or just how they see the world or their worldviews? I'm just curious about how the genesis of that part of the each character.
Yeah, I mean, I definitely set out with the understanding that these people had changed over the years, not just changed because time changes us by its nature, but also, they experienced a trauma when they were teenagers, right? They find this staircase in the woods connected to nothing. One of them goes up it, it disappears. And then they don't follow. There's a moment of cowardice and confusion, and they don't follow their friend, and then it's gone. The opportunity to find their friend is over, at least so they think. And so, in the ensuing, 20 years after that, I think that sort of trauma imprints, right? I mean, that's sort of like you've broken something fundamental. This is a group of kids who sort of formed their own kind of personal mythology around themselves. They have this thing called the covenant that binds them. And then it feels like they kind of broke that in that moment. They don't help their friend. They don't find their friend. In the ensuing, 2 decades, I feel like they can't really become full adults. They don't really have it together. They certainly aren't friends anymore. And to watch that, how trauma has sort of broken that cookie, so to speak, is what was interesting to me. I didn't know exactly what that meant. I knew that in writing the book, I would discover the true parameters of that, but I knew the impetus and the onus of that was that trauma from their teenage years.
It was a little bit heartbreaking, as you read and you see how they were, in their
Yeah,
teenage years, and then you see the 20-year later version,
yeah,
and that kind of leads me to my next question, just in terms of this notion of being able to repair these things, right?
yeah.
And so I really love the passage where you kind of dive deep into this notion of friendship being like a house.
Mm,
And one thing in this story is that the house is constantly changing, like rooms are changing, everything's kind of being altered, and these past events are coming to the surface and haunting these characters. And while it's horrifying to watch, and obviously they're horrified by it, I kept feeling like there's something kind of beautiful in that horror because of what the end result was. And while this was a terrible experience for them, at the same time, it seems as if it gave them another opportunity to rekindle that bond that they once had. And I'm wondering, like, if you can expand a little bit on that theme of, can tragedy be a gift in a way? Can it usher in, maybe a repair or usher in a new version of friendship?
sure. Yeah, I don't think in the case of this story, the tragedy is itself the gift, because the tragedy is what breaks them in the first place, right? I mean, it's the thing that shatters them apart. But I think the sort of through line to that is that no matter how broken something gets, there are ways to, if not repair it, to rebuild it. And so that's the through line. It's not that it itself is a gift, but these characters are themselves the gift to each other, so to speak, that they are better together than they were separate. And the problem is, when they were teenagers, this incident separated them and it put them on different paths and different journeys when really they could have been operating together that whole time and maybe made something different happen. So it took them a little while to maybe get it together for this to be forced upon them.
Yeah, I mean, and it ends in a very open-ended way. And it was curious because I said, oh, this is a really cool ending because, it didn't fall in line with I hate to say it, but kind of like I encounter this sometimes working in the film industry and then, even publishing too, where they want everything to end on like this high note, right? Like,
Yeah.
let's wrap everything up in a bow and let's have everyone have these kind of feel good,
Yeah.
experience and then send them on their way. And I don't want to give a whole lot away here, but I'm wondering if you left it open for the potential for these characters to return, maybe in a later book or.
I'm never opposed to doing that, but I also know it's fraught in that people aren't always sold on sequels, and I think you have to make sure that there's a really good story there and that there's an audience there to receive that story, hopefully that is really good. So I'm certainly not opposed to it, but the purpose of leaving that without getting too deep into spoilers, the reason the ending was the way the ending was that the story itself that is being told to us, the reader, is kind of resolved. The characters are telling a different story in their heads as to what they're looking for. And that is still sort of a little bit of a hanging question at the end. What they're looking for, what they thought they were looking for, now has an option for resolution. But at the end of the day, what the reader was hopefully discovering throughout was it was really the story, not of the five characters, but of the four. And those four have a resolution together, toward the end of that book. And then the question of what happens next is sort of that sort of hanging, dangling bit that maybe there's something there to be a thread to grab onto in the future, or maybe there isn't. I don't know. So I'm not opposed, but it wasn't exactly the design.
Gotcha. Well, you get my vote. I would love to
Thank
see.
I would too. I always love them. Yeah, I'm a sucker. I would take any of my books and just like keep writing them. I'd be like, I will write them till I die. Like every characters I kind of want to keep revisiting. Well, characters is sort of like why we come to the page, right? It's sort of like the fun part about it.
Exactly. Yeah. Because once they live in your head for some time, I mean, they exist to you. And it's like, it's hard just to kind of cut that off, because they.
Yeah. It's like Severance with the innies and outies. Like, I don't want them to die.
Yeah.
Exactly. I don't write them anymore. It feels like they've expired some way.
That's true. That's true. So I had mentioned that I had read the Star Wars, the first one, the Aftermath.
Yeah.
And I'm curious. So when I read your work, and I'm thinking Miriam Black, I'm thinking that your new book, The Staircase in the Woods, and then I read Star Wars, I'm always fascinated on this idea of how authors can, I don't know, like almost switch a little bit.
Yeah.
So like and I've done, ghostwriting and collaborations and things like that, where it's not my story per se. And I'm wondering if when it comes to readership, is it a different approach? So when you're writing your, straight from your imagination, 100% original, not in some existing universe, is your approach different when it comes to putting those words on the page?
I mean, the overall, act of writing and storytelling kind of remains the same. Like the bones of the animal are still the bones of the animal, and I still need to tell a story. And at the end of the day, no matter whether it's IP work or whether it's original work, like I view even across multiple genres, right? Like I view myself as the genre. Like I'm trying to bring myself to the page as much as possible without being intrusive. or overbearing over the prose. Like I don't want you to feel me hovering there, but like at the same time, like I think when you read a Stephen King novel, because you mentioned him earlier, whether you're reading Eyes of the Dragon or the Dark Tower stuff or the short stories or the really gnarly horror stuff, I feel like you always feel like it's a Stephen King novel. I feel like he's broadcasting himself through that book, not like in a real heavy way, but it's like a scent in the air, like a knocking of the pipes in the wall. You kind of know that he's present. And that to me is the goal, is to not really worry so much about genre or IP or original work, and so much as long as it feels like something that I wrote, and that I could be proud of, and that people can identify it as something I like, or that I wrote, and so that when they read it, when they seek other books by me, they find common thread or common interest. Certainly at the outset, when I'm starting to write, writing an IP work, which I don't do too much of, does start a little different because you usually have to have more outlining up front, and maybe there's a story Bible involved that you have to look at. You just want to make sure you're not in conflict with ultimately the rights holders, as much as it's tempting to believe that like our initial audience for those is the readership. It's kind of the license holder, like whoever you're writing the book for, they're who you're pleasing first. Because if they don't like it, then it doesn't work, and it's their job to make sure it's something that the audience then wants, their audience. Obviously, my job as a writer is still ultimately a readership, but you kind of have a client. And it's almost like with screenplays, like you're yes, you're trying to write to an audience inevitably, but you still have all of these interstitial people that you're trying to kind of write to and sell to along the way. And so that is one of the complicating factors to doing IP work, original or licensed IP work, I should say. Technically, all work is IP work, I guess.
Yeah.
It's all our intellectual property. So,
Okay. Yeah. I mean, and I'm curious though, is there ever this I don't know, this kind of biting notion of what if I veer too far off, or, they quote unquote hate it. Like I've done certain things where, I've taken, someone else's idea or what have you, and I'm like, oh, they might not go for this. I mean, like, is there ever a moment like, say when if you're working on the Star Wars books where, it's such a serious, we'll put it like that, fan base. And I know you said obviously it's going to get kind of the sign off,
yeah.
but as you're writing, is there ever, a little bit of concern or worry exists as you write? Or do you just say, you know what, I'm putting it on the page, and if they go for it, they go for it.
Yeah, I think there's a big part of that is just being like, well, I'm going to put it out there because like the inevitable goal is, well, like I'm a fan of the project. Like I would only take on work, licensed work that like I am a fan of in some way. I wouldn't just take a job that I've never watched a thing or seen a thing. Then I would be more hesitant word to word because I'm like, I don't really know this crowd. It's like trying to like, get on stage and perform music for people whose music interests you simply don't know. But ideally, like when I'm writing a Star Wars novel, I'm writing to people who, like me, are Star Wars fans. So hopefully there's some part of me that's connecting to them. Like if I like it, hopefully they'll like it. And it's the same way writing the original work. Like, I'm writing work and stories and scary stories for people who I think I can scare because they're like me. Like they dig the same kind of stuff that I do. Like I think storytelling is often this sort of exhortation against loneliness. Like we're in the dark cave calling out and we're hoping someone else calls back. And we hear that call and response in the dark. And I think that's ultimately what storytelling is, whether, whatever genre or origin point it comes from.
The fact that you've done film work, do you see yourself potentially adapting, say, The Staircase in the Woods? Because as I was reading, I was like, man, this is incredibly visual. Like I could definitely see this, being adapted, definitely for like a TV series. I think it
Oh,
would be
sure.
ideal.
Yeah. Yeah, I'd love to adapt it. Yeah. I mean, most of my other work has been in some way optioned, and usually I'm not in any way involved beyond like consultant or a producer or whatever. I know there was talk on the first round when we had Wanderers out, and the showrunner wanted me maybe on the writing staff, but it's one of those things where it hasn't gotten to the point of having a writing staff. So I'm not quite near it on that front. But Staircase is definitely something I could tackle. Like you were talking about the Miriam Black books, like I had originally written the first book of that into a screenplay.
Oh,
And that for a while was one of those, that was the first sort of option for it, was a film, not a TV show. And eventually it got picked up for TV. And then at that point, my script wasn't as meaningful because I had written a feature. So I could see writing Staircase more particularly as a feature, I think, is how I would write it were I to do that.
when it comes to that stuff, it's always like, yeah, do you spend the time and adapt it with the offshoot chance that, hey, it'll actually become something? But I
Never
don't know.
know.
You never know. So what projects are you working on now?
I have a middle grade I'm working on that's sort of a weird twist on Portal Fantasy, and I'm also writing a two-book duology, a two-book series for Del Rey, same publisher as Staircase in the Woods. Called the first book is called The Calamities, and the second book is called Chaos Reigns, and it's sort of about demonic influence taking over, roots of power and structures of government and so forth. So it's a bit of a oops, like I pitched it a little while ago, and I don't think I quite realized how on the nose I was getting with it. So trying to just like, okay, we're getting close, but not too close, I hope.
Okay, right on. And do you have a publishing date for that, or?
No, I think the first book will probably be out maybe next year, end of next year, something like that.
Okay.
I
Well,
have to
hey,
finish it first. As soon as I finish it, then maybe
you're
we
still
can talk about
tapping into the zeitgeist here.
it.
So,
Exactly. Well, yeah, what has been broken by then? What I've done.
all right, very good, very good. So how can people learn more about you and find out about your work, and then also, um, when does the Staircase in the Woods publish? Or begin?
Staircase is out at the end of April, so April 29th, and I go on a
29.
short tour for that, so like a week and a half tour. And I'm always at my website, terribleminds.com, which is I have a blog. You can find appearances there. I'm also on Instagram and Blue Sky if you want to find me there.
Well, I appreciate it. Thank you for chatting
Yeah,
with
thanks.
me. This
Thanks
has
for having
been
me.
great. And
Cool, man.
we shall hopefully reconvene. I would love to have you back on, and once these two novels that you're speaking about come out,
Yeah,
because they seem very timely, and I think it'd be wonderful
let's
to
do it.
further this conversation, especially in terms of horror and what's going on in the world right now, as we kind of living in a horror of
Yeah,
our own
we're living in interesting
making here.
times. Yeah, and we can.
So,
Fantastic.
all right. Well, I appreciate it. Thank
Cool,
you.
man. Thanks very much.
All right. Have a good one.
You too.